Get ready to take a flamethrower to the official narrative and learn what the elites don't want you to know. You're listening to The Tom Woods Show.
Hey everybody, Tom Woods here, episode 2532 of The Tom Woods Show, and I'm delighted to have Andrew Isker with me today. He's the author of The Boniface Option. He has been in Minnesota for, I will find out from him how many years exactly, but enough to talk about our Democratic vice presidential nominee, put it that way. He's about to be a refugee from Minnesota for that very reason. So Andrew, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Tom.
So when you found out that your state's governor was chosen to be Kamala Harris's vice presidential pick, what'd you think about that?
Well, I wasn't, too terribly surprised that he was going to be the pick. He is, especially knowing what we do about, Kamala Harris and her agenda, her political views, to the extent that they're even public, right? It's very far left, very radical, and of course, so is Tim Walz, right? He has taken our state, and it was always this, somewhat liberal state in the older conventional sense, high taxes, things like that. But never was it this radical far left place like you would think of like San Francisco or somewhere on like New York City or far left cities like that. And they got in, he got in, the Democrats got the control of the state legislature. And as soon as they did, they went as hard as they possibly could. And so he took advantage of that and is being rewarded.
Indeed. I mean, spending time with Kamala Harris, I don't know if that's a reward, but he could be rewarded with indeed, becoming vice president of the United States. And it's so weird. I mean, we're going to get into in a minute the various positions that he's held over the years. But for heaven's sake, the gaslighting that has gone on with regard to this guy is absolutely off the charts, even by 21st century standards. The whole J.D. Vance is weird thing, when J.D. Vance is, I have my issues with him, but he's not. He's just a guy, and he's pretty much like most of America. He's weird. He's normal. He's got a wife. He's got kids. He's normal, but this guy is supposed to be like the dad, America's dad, and he's just so great. He's the dad we all wanted, and all this and that, and yet everything he believes is whacked out crazy that would have been repudiated and would have and would have appalled every single American, left, right, center, Republican, Democrat, whatever, in say 1961. It's absolutely crazy to me.
Yeah, I mean, I can go down the road to my local public high school, Waseca High School, to the boys' bathroom, and on the wall, according to state law that he signed and pushed to have passed, you will find a tampon dispenser for all of the young men in Waseca High School who menstruate. Right? That's the kind of person that we are dealing with in Tim Walz. It's just insane.
Do you realize that literally the entire world would have considered that a sign of absolute insanity?
Yeah.
15 years ago, tops, the entire world. But then given the way people, for some reason, here's another thing. It's a separate thing. This is the thing that really makes me convinced, if I needed to be convinced, about the nature of evil in this world and how systematically organized it is, so systematically organized that it practically compels a supernatural account, is that the way liberalism has absolutely swept the boards everywhere, in every nook and cranny, it's every aspect of society. It's swept the board in the churches. And now, I'm not saying that there are no non-liberal churches, but you know what I mean.
Yeah, of course.
American Christianity,
I definitely know. Yeah.
I mean, it is conquered territory. And yet the thing is, liberalism has generated ugliness and depravity and self-centeredness and weirdness and everything it touches becomes hideous. There's nothing noble about it. It doesn't compel you to pursue virtue and greatness or to aspire to anything. And yet it wins. Everything it touches, it emerges victorious. And I just don't get it. I mean, it would be one thing if you and I were losing to a philosophy that was beautiful and bold and daring, aiming at great things, aiming at elevating the human spirit. Then I could at least say, all right, well, at least it was a fair fight and, we lost to something noble. But I can't even say that.
I know. It is. It's so monstrous and destructive, and it inverts everything, right? It isn't just a few degrees off of what is true, or a few degrees off of what is beautiful, or a few degrees off of what is good. It's 180 degrees the opposite of what is true and good and beautiful. And you look at it. I mean, I often, I'm a pastor, so I'm a minister of the gospel. I preach the gospel to people, and this is a powerful apologetic, and it should be, right? If our churches weren't so liberal politically and in every way, people would be able to say this, like, look, there is evil present among us everywhere. It's winning, right? There must be a God, because they hate him, right? They hate him. They want to destroy everything he's done, everything that he's made, everything that's beautiful, everything that points toward him. And so, you see that, and Tim Walz is just this latest iteration of it in our area in Minnesota, where everything they've done is horrific. I mean, even in 2022, he gets elected on the major issue is right after the Dobbs decision, and so the major issue is abortion, and the Republicans, right? They had always talked a big talk about abortion under Roe versus Wade, because they just assumed we would never have to do anything, right? We could say, we're going to ban it, all this kind of stuff. And then Roe versus Wade actually gets overturned, and now they have to engage in the political process on this issue, and they get trounced by it. Walz makes it the chief issue after the most abysmal stretch of any governor in the state's history with COVID and with the lockdowns and with BLM starting here. And I mean, he was easy pickings for even a competent campaigner to beat him. And they didn't. They allowed him to make the entire issue about abortion. And he passed the most radical abortion laws in the entire country, right? To the point where we have, 8 children born that they let die on the operating tables every year in this state because they passed this law. It's just truly, monstrous and horrific, the things that they do in this state, that he has done in this state.
Well, I think back to 1988. I mean, I spent almost half my life I guess as I'm getting older, the fraction is getting smaller, but a big chunk of my life in Massachusetts. And in 1988, the Democrats nominated our governor, Michael Dukakis. And Dukakis went around proclaiming to the country how he had helped to orchestrate the so-called Massachusetts miracle. But we who lived in Massachusetts knew that he fought tooth and nail against every single thing that amounted to the Massachusetts miracle. But there was no getting that out to the general public. I mean, of course, he lost ultimately. But then I think back and think, Mike Dukakis seems like a right-wing extremist compared to the people we have now.
I know.
I mean, I should have thanked my lucky stars. At least the worst I had was Michael Dukakis. Jeez, I mean, he was a nerd academic type. And, I mean, I wouldn't have liked him. But if, I wouldn't have felt like every single thing I held dear was under constant assault. I would have just thought he's some untalented boob and, we'll probably suffer through and maybe we'll get somebody better. But it is insane how this stuff has accelerated so much. And the thing is that what they're focused on, when I say they, I mean a lot of Trump people and some independents and the veterans, is the military, the Walz military record. And that to me, now this goes to show maybe how out of touch I am with America, but that is the least interesting complaint about him. I mean, if he lies about his military service, that is probably contemptible on some level, but that's better than putting tampons in the boys' room. You know what I mean?
Well, yeah. I mean, the most egregious part of it, I think, is he lies about going to war, and the the lie is in service of him saying assault weapons should be banned. Right? He says,
true.
We shouldn't have guns that I carried around in war.
Good,
right? We need to ban them.
point.
Yeah, and so I mean that it's bad enough that he's lying about it and those kinds of things. It's even worse that he's saying, no, I want to take all of your guns away, right? Because I went to war and only I should be allowed to have it when, no, you didn't. So yeah, I think and that's the thing I think the Republicans should be focused on even more is like just from a political perspective, gun control is extremely unpopular, right? I mean, we're unfortunately in a democracy, everybody gets to vote and political control is decided that way. And so we can be thankful that aspect of their platform is incredibly unpopular, and they should capitalize on that. That he made this lie in service of that issue.
I think we should talk about, let's say, the big problems with this guy, and particularly, I mean, there are a couple that have to do with the terrible year 2020. So let's start first with the burning of I guess Minneapolis.
Yeah.
And I'd like to know about his role in that. And also, am I hearing this right, that his wife said something like she opened the window so she could smell the burning because of, like, I don't know what this symbolized to her, but it's all evil. Like, why would you?
Yeah.
That's sick and twisted. What was her comment?
Her comment was something along the lines of, right, she opened her window to smell the burning tires or the burning debris or whatever, because that was the smell of racial justice, right? That's how sick these people are, right? They celebrate, things like that. They celebrate the destruction of it, and it's even worse. I remember watching all of this take place. It's very near to where I live. I'm about an hour and a half from the Twin Cities. And I'm seeing all of this play out. I'm seeing the first day, that Target gets looted and it's, burned down, and then all sorts of other stores are burned and looted. And it took him days to mobilize the National Guard. He blamed the mayor of Minneapolis, also a very far left wacko, Jacob Fry, and he blamed it. So, you didn't get the paperwork in correctly. And then when the media, on the rare occasion they ever deigned to criticize him whatsoever, he says, well, what good are a bunch of 19-year-olds, cooks going to do anyway, right? Untrained cooks, right? That's how he talked about these guys. Which is, incredibly ironic, because this is a guy who's touted his 24 years of service in the Minnesota National Guard. It's like, they're just a bunch of untrained cooks. They can't do anything. And so he drug his feet on mobilizing the National Guard, which makes you wonder, well, why did he do that? Right? Why would he do that? Well, his wife, I think, gave it away, right? The destruction was, in their sick, perverted view of the world, it's justice, right? That the city deserved to be burned down because, white people are so horrible to black people. And also his daughter, his Antifa daughter, was tweeting out where the police were going to be and where the National Guard was going to be located as the riot is happening. So she's leaking stuff publicly to the rioters, right? What spots to avoid so you don't get caught by the cops. And so you wonder that too, like nothing happened to her for coordinating these riots on her Twitter account. He played a very pivotal role. So again, it comes as no surprise to me that he would be elevated, even though he's a astoundingly mediocre person. Like, if you've watched him speak and had to deal with this person, right? He's not that impressive. So why would this guy rise to the top? Well, I think it's an old Rothbard quote, right? The worst rise to the top, right? And he's one of the worst.
Hey, everybody, being in this movement, sometimes you get shamed for what you eat. You're not eating the right thing. I say you should be eating this, or you should be eating that. You shouldn't be eating that. And it's stressful because you're busy, you want to eat well, but you're tired. You can't bear the idea of dirtying up that kitchen again. Maybe you don't have the right ingredients. And then you feel guilty because you wind up going and ordering food you probably shouldn't eat. And you struggle with this every single day. Well, Factor is a great solution. For one thing, you certainly won't get bored. You got over 35 different options a week to choose from to have delivered straight to your door, including keto, calorie smart, vegan and veggie, and more. It's easier than ever to have a week's worth of meals ready to go, no stress. Pause or reschedule your deliveries anytime. Factor's restaurant quality meals are ready to heat and eat whenever you are. And it's not just dinner, by the way. You'll discover a wide variety of options for the entire day, like breakfast, midday bites, and more. All easy. Factor's delicious meals are less expensive than takeout, and they're much better for you. And you don't have to worry about cleaning the kitchen because their meals are 100% ready to heat and eat. Head to factormeals.com/woods50 and use code WOODS50 to get 50% off. That's code WOODS50 at factormeals.com/woods50 to get 50% off. I feel like it's a matter of if you want your city burned, then I guess you have your candidate, but it just astonishes me that wouldn't just be immediately disqualifying. I mean, what do you think? In any other time or place, it would be disqualifying if under your watch a city burned for, no reason. I mean, there aren't very many good reasons to burn a city, but the ones they gave certainly don't cut it. So you would think that would be disqualified. People would think, well, I don't really want to have my city burned, even if it were in the service of some kind of twisted alleged racial justice. I don't really want that. But no, or now let's talk about COVID. Now, I mean, at this point, unless you are absolutely unconscious, you know that the world does not and did not look the way it should have looked if these various measures did anything. I mean, that's obvious, because if Florida has better all-cause mortality than California, I don't want to hear about Florida suppressed its COVID numbers. You can argue that all day long if you want to. Has nothing to do with measuring all-cause mortality. You hear the words all-cause? Mm-hmm. All-cause mortality. Florida does better than California. Then none of this stuff did any good. So you would think people would say, well, gee, some people really stuck with it longer than others, and that meant they made things worse for a long time. They compromised people's health. They wiped out their savings accounts. They ruined their livelihoods. And there was no good reason to do it, and people who stopped doing it saw no ill effects. So we should be unhappy about this. And yet it's like, nope, I want you to lock me up for pseudoscientific reasons that amount to nothing, and I want my city to burn, and I'm going to cheer for that and vote for you. Doesn't that seem weird to you?
Yeah, it is.
I realize I'm preaching to the choir.
No,
I understand.
I know. Yeah, you're telling me. It does. I mean, and especially, I mean, the anarcho-tyranny of that moment, because the BLM, George Floyd riots happened, and we all were supposed to be inside. And if you go outside, you're supposed to wear a mask, and you're not supposed to leave your house, but you can for this. You're allowed to do this. But if I wanted to go to the gym and work out, if I wanted to go to church, well, no, you can't do that. But if you want to go, burn down an O'Reilly's Auto Parts, well, yeah, that's fine. You can go do that. It was insane. But again, right, this evil man who has done despicable things, right? He gets rewarded for this. His career is advanced. And I mean, personally, I have one friend. She went to prison for 90 days for opening her coffee shop, right? Because she violated Tim Walz's executive order, because her business was going to go out of business, right? This thing she devoted her life to. And it's like, well, either I go to jail or I lose everything. So I'm going to open up. And right, he could have dropped the case, but he refused to, and put this older woman in prison. It's insane. And this is someone that now they are installing that's going to be a heartbeat away from the presidency.
Yeah, it's and the thing is that there's so much division now that it's harder than ever for people to admit, geez, I was super wrong about this. Like, oh my gosh, this guy's just a disaster. It can't happen. So it's demoralizing. Tell me about this whole controversy surrounding the state flag. I know nothing about the state flag of Minnesota.
Yeah, so the state flag, I have it up, here in my office. It's kind of it's a symbol of rebellion now in Minnesota. If you still fly the old Minnesota state flag, even though it's not particularly beautiful, all the old Midwestern state flags have come back from the war between the states with the blue field and then this the state seal in the middle. So they're they're not particularly beautiful, but we don't love it or have a connection to it because of its particular beauty, but rather that that's our flag, it's our heritage, it's our history. And there's been a push for several years among the left in Minnesota to get rid of it, to remove it, because there is a, if you look at it, right, people can pull up the old Minnesota state flag, on their browser and look at it. It has right in the back, there is a Native American man on horseback who is going west, right? If you look at north, south, east, and west, as you're looking at the flag, he's going west, and that they take that as symbolizing, well, they're driving the Native Americans out, and that's evil and racist. And there's a white guy plowing a field. Well, it's white people driving out Native Americans, and that's evil and horrible and racist, and we don't want to celebrate that. So we're going to replace it with a different flag, with a, that's half light blue, half navy blue, with a big white star in the middle. And many people think, they deny it, but many people think, well, this looks an awful lot like the flag of Somalia, right? It was this, did Ilhan Omar have a hand in bringing this flag about? And again, they deny it. They say, oh, it's a crazy conspiracy theory, but I don't know. They do awfully look an awful lot the same. And especially because, right, the agenda of Tim Walz, and something that he delights in, is along the lines with what his wife said about the Floyd riots. So he wants to squash Americans. He wants to just revel in denouncing our history and our heritage. My friend CJ Engel, he coined this term, heritage Americans, heritage America, right? Just people that love the history and heritage of America, right? That they love who they are, where they came from. They love their history, warts and all, and they're not embarrassed by it, right? This is something I think that's started to come into being. I think, you, Tom, have played a role in this as well with, your politically incorrect guide to, American history, where people can look at their history, the things they've been taught in school, that are simply not true. And one of the people teaching children things that are just preposterously untrue, to teach them to hate the history of their country, the history of their state, was Tim Walz. He was a teacher for 30 years at Mankato West High School, a history teacher. And I had the fortune of not having him as my teacher, but I know people who did. And this is a guy who, right, if you look at your books that you've written, he would teach the complete opposite of what happened in American history. And what is the reason for that, right? He hates us, right? He hates what we love. That's the main theme, right? Everything that we love, everything that's true and good and beautiful, he despises, and he wants to invert all of it.
And there's something unbelievably contemptible about this whole, we have to change this, we have to change that, we are more enlightened than people who came before us. Really, this guy's a sack of dirt compared to people who came before him. Of all people, to be, you ain't, well, if I may quote Sammy Davis Jr. from an episode of All in the Family, which was, of course, a leftist show, but as he said to Archie Bunker, you ain't better than anybody. So that's what I think about when I look at these left-wing politicians who think they're superior. They're going to take this stature down, and I think you ain't better than anybody. Get your hands off these things. And of course, you're doing this, in I suppose the interest of satisfying a group of people who will never thank you, who will never be appreciative, who will simply meet your iconoclasm with 17 more demands. And my attitude is, if you're going to act like that and have that kind of I hate to use the word hateful. Now they've ruined it. But you're going to have that kind of attitude. I'm not going to appease you. Okay, there's no appeasing you. I don't particularly feel like appeasing you. I feel like you should appease me. We've done enough of this. We've renamed schools and torn down statues and said this is forbidden, that's forbidden, and it hasn't raised one test score, has it? Not one.
No, certainly not. And in during the BLM riots, that was one of the big things that happened is that in the front of the state capitol in St. Paul, there was a big statue of Christopher Columbus, and of course they tore that down They ripped that thing out, and Tim Walz said, well, we're not going to charge anybody for that, even though they did it in broad daylight. There are police all over the place. We're not going to charge anyone for that. Right? If you took an unscheduled tour of the Capitol, a little bit later that year of the U.S. Capitol, well, all the police, the FBI, everything will be after you. But if you tear down a statue of Christopher Columbus in the Minnesota State House, well, we're going to celebrate you, and we're going to rename the day. We're going to call it Indigenous Peoples Day. We're going to get rid of Columbus Day, and all of these things, again and again, all of it is they hate the things that we love. I mean, I personally, my ancestors, you alluded to this in the opening, right? I've been here. My family has been here for counting my children, right? 6 generations in this same town in Waseca, Minnesota. They, my ancestors came here in the 1870s and settled this land. Right? It was only a couple hundred people here. It was mostly wilderness and prairie, and they built things. They suffered tremendously to build civilization in a place where it had not existed, to build prosperity for their children. They worked extremely hard and made the things that we've inherited. And so for someone to say, no, your ancestors, they were evil. They were evil people. We hate them. We're going to do everything we can to teach your children, to diminish them, to hate them. We're going to overturn all of their achievements and pretend that didn't happen, right? And for what, right? For what? For nothing, right? For people that despise you. I remember back in 2018 when also another Minnesotan, so-called Ilhan Omar was running for Congress. Right, her pinned tweet on her Twitter profile is that America is the most racist, bigoted, homophobic and evil country that has ever existed. And I'm thinking, right, well, this woman came here in the 1990s. Her family was going to be slaughtered in the communist regime, right, that she fled from. Her family was part of the communist regime after the government's overthrown. They're all going to be killed, right? We give her shelter, free healthcare, free housing, free food, free education. And how does she repay America? By running for Congress and saying we're all evil, we're all horrible people, right? That's right in line with what Walz has done as well, right? Those are the people that he does this for, the people that have no thankfulness whatsoever for what my people have done for them.
Hey, everybody, let's take a minute to thank our sponsor, Persist SEO. If you are getting buried by your competition online, then build your brand, your reputation, and your lead flow with digital marketing by Persist SEO. If you are a small local business trying to compete against large companies in the service industry, then increase your visibility with Persist SEO. Or what if you have low or no leads coming in on a consistent basis? Well, then website search engine and conversion optimization can help move the needle to a more prosperous business model for you. Are you tired of cold calling and networking, meeting places getting shut down? Use your website as a lead generation engine. Or what if you're not showing up for your services in the search engines? Well, get found with Persist SEO's expert search engine optimization. All you have to do is call 770-580-3736 or visit them at ineedseo.help for a free website audit and consultation. That's 770-580-3736 or ineedseo.help. Wait, honestly, could you imagine, I mean, this doesn't apply to him, but could you imagine settling in another country and basically arranging your career out of making demands of the majority population that owes you nothing?
Yeah.
And making demands out of them and demonizing them like that. That's almost like a form of mental retardation. Like that's so that's so beyond the pale of how a normal, somewhat grateful person would behave. I mean, I would behave extremely modestly in that situation. You know, I mean,
I know.
And if I may say something that I know most people won't agree with me on, I get it. I've even argued with my own wife about this one. But when I'm in another country where the main language is not English, when I'm on the street, I speak below conversational tone in English because I feel like me going around going blah 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 in some foreign tongue I feel like it's discourteous. And I know that's going, maybe that's going too far. I feel like it's discourteous. Or if it's in a country where I at least know the language a little, I'm going to try to speak that. Just because it's a way of indicating my desire to connect with my fellow human being on this level. So you may say I've taken it too far, but honestly, that's how I feel.
Yeah, I agree with you. So at least you have somebody on your side. But
okay, well, that's good.
But you're absolutely right. Yeah,
we've not, however, hit on maybe the biggest of the issues in terms of. I mean, I don't know how you rank these. Honestly, I think this is one area where I feel like a gentleman could have an honorable disagreement. How do you rank the various insane things from the Tim Walz career? You know, I mean, we can debate this out, but arguably, number one has to do with the trans issue, particularly in the schools. Now, you tell us what has been going on over there.
Yeah, so in 2022, after the GOP in Minnesota finally lost the state Senate in the 2022 election, they lost it by a single seat. And the very first bill that the DFL here passed was on abortion, to completely open that up and have zero restrictions on it whatsoever. And the second bill that they passed, right, so indicating their legislative priorities, the things that they care about the very most. Second bill they passed was a trans rights bill, and included in the trans rights was, if you have a child that declares himself or herself the opposite sex that they were born with, and you as a parent oppose their transition, the state has the authority to take that child out of your custody. So if all of your rights as a parent completely wiped out, completely gone. I mean, it's to the point where, right, if you have a very small child, right, it's you have children, Tom, I have children. Like, little kids say crazy stuff all the time, right? If I'm somewhere and an official of the state, like a public school teacher or even a doctor, we understand that now after COVID, right? I go to the doctor's office and they say, "All right, little Johnny, are you a boy or a girl?" And he says, "Well, I feel like a girl today," right? That's enough. That's all they need. And if you say, "No, he doesn't," right? Your kids are gone. Right? CPS comes, gets them, takes them away. You lose them forever. They get put in foster care, and that's it. Or at best, you're going to have to fight a legal battle to get them back, spend thousands of dollars and incredible heartache. And I look at, I mean, that's the number one reason when my wife and I are thinking about, all right, we're both from Minnesota. She's from St. Paul. I'm from southern Minnesota. And we love this state. We love our family, we love everything about it. And even the cold, even the winter. And it's heartbreaking to even have this thought, but we saw that bill get passed. And like, we can't stay. We have 6 children. We can't stay in a place where they could just take them from me at any moment. That is, it's. But we went through COVID, and it's like, this is the most tyrannical thing yet. I thought like that COVID was going to be it, and it's like, no, this is even worse.
But if after you've said that, am I going to get a lot of comments from people saying, "Oh, he's totally exaggerating the situation. Maybe there's an odd case or two of this happening, but he's this is a crazy right-wing extremist"?
Well, they haven't. It hasn't. As far as I know, there haven't been any examples of them exercising this authority yet. Maybe there have, and just has never made the news. But the fact that the legal authority exists for them to do that, and they've written it into the law, is the terrifying thing, right? It's right at this point, it's a loaded gun pointed at your head, and I don't want to. And if you have the opportunity to step away from the loaded gun, right, you got to take it. And so I don't know if anyone has actually had to go through that, but I don't want to be the guinea pig, right? To test this case out, to take it to the Supreme Court. I don't want that happening to my children. I don't want them to be the guinea pig of this happening.
Yeah, no, I think that is the right way to think about it. That I mean, it's in a way similar to the Patriot Act, because they'll say, "Oh, it's only been used a handful of times." That's not much comfort, especially watching the way this regime operates. And not to mention, it actually puts me in mind of, this may be a frivolous comparison, but when I was in grad school, before moving on to the doctoral portion of the program, you had to take an oral exam that you prepare for a very long time. But they console you by telling you, well, don't worry, nobody's ever failed this exam. But in a way, that's a double-edged sword, because then if I'm the first one, then from now on, it'll be nobody ever failed this except Woods. So that actually didn't help me.
Yeah, exactly. I think I don't want to be the first one. I don't want my children to suffer this way. And the fact that they would set up that legal authority to do that is horrifying. It's terrifying. I don't want to be subject to anything like that whatsoever. Especially like, me in particular. Like I write books. I've started. I go on shows like the Tom Woods Show, and if they want to everything that I do, and the more stuff that I do, especially opposing these people, the bigger the target is on my back. Where it's like, oh, who are we going to pick to take their child and trans them? Well, why don't we pick Andrew Isker? Right? We don't like him. Right? That's the danger of living in a place like this, where if they have these things in the background, and this is all totalitarian regimes, right? If they have these tools in the background, right, this sword of Damocles hanging over your head, well, you're not going to criticize them as much,
right?
If that's a possibility,
And there's the arbitrariness of it too, that they could just look the other way, or they could bring the hammer down, and you don't know which it'll be, and so better to just get on out of there. And what a shame, because when I mentioned Massachusetts earlier, I have a great fondness for that place, really.
Yeah.
Despite the politics, there's great history there. Many parts of it are very beautiful.
Yeah.
And I love the climate. I love so much about it. But there's just no way I could move back there now. And I don't mean that, like 20 years ago, I probably would have. And I would have said, I don't like the politics, but life isn't just politics. But now it's like, the other side is no longer just people who have a difference with me on tax policy. Now it's like, there's an implied knife at my throat. So what a shame that they've taken they've taken so much from us, but even the very places that we grew up in and we grew to love, they've taken those.
Yeah. That's just it. I spent some time away at seminary and at a few different churches across the country, and my whole goal was always to come back to Minnesota, and we finally were able to in 2018. And I knew going in, okay, this is kind of a liberal state. It always was. The taxes were always higher than everywhere else, but I could deal with that. That's fine. I don't want to pay higher taxes, of course, but it's home, and I'm willing to pay the taxes and deal with the politics. But now that it's gone beyond just, marginal tax rate, what is it going to be? What are we going to do with the welfare money? Those kind of considerations. It's now, right, we can take your kids from you, or we will push all sorts of, insane LGBTQ stuff everywhere in your face all day long. There's no way of getting away from it. We're going to push all that kind of stuff, right? All of these things are pushed onto you, and there's nothing you can do about it whatsoever, other than vote with your feet and say, no, I'm not going to do this anymore. I'm getting out of here. And as an aside, moving to Tennessee, it will be nice because the state income tax rate there is 0. So it's interesting how the far left states have really high taxes, and it's really undesirable to live there economically and culturally. But then the horrible far right states like Tennessee or Florida, that's pretty nice to not have to pay any state income taxes.
Well, I have a little bit of a theory about that for example, California, there's no denying that it has a very nice climate, and it has very mild temperatures, and again has the beach, and it's very scenic. But that precisely for that reason, they know you want to be there, and so they can get away with making life harder and harder and harder because it'll be tougher for you to cut the cord.
Yeah. Minnesota is not quite the same, right? It's very, very harsh winters, but I think part of it is it is a similar argument because it is a pleasant place. Especially the small towns and the suburbs, very high trust communities, very very high community spirit where your neighbors care about you. You actually get to know your neighbors. It's nice to have growing up, real community. But right, they manipulate that. Right, they manipulate that sort of cultural ethos into, all right, we're gonna have tolerance. Right, we're gonna tolerate all of these horribly antisocial behaviors and force you to praise them. Right, they manipulate all of those things, and they manipulate you on the economic side of it as well. What we care about, I mean, the thing with Walz that they're touting for him is he gave free school lunches to children. Don't you care about children, right, getting fed, right? Don't you care about them? And of course, if I say, well, it's the responsibility of their parents to feed them, not me and not the taxpayer, right? And you get called the bad guy. Oh, why do you hate children? Why do you hate them so much? It's like, these same people want to take children away and have their genitals removed. Yeah, they're giving them a free lunch.
And look, on the lunches thing, I mean, first of all, you could if that was really necessary to pay for that. I mean, there's anything you could cut in that state budget that would replace that if you wanted to find money for school lunches. Second thing would be the school lunches are all terrible. We all know that.
I know.
Basically, they're going to be putting free poison in the kids' stomachs. Awesome.
Right.
These lunches are a disaster. And and remember when Michelle Obama was in charge of that or put herself in charge of that, it was all food that was inspired by like nutritional guidelines from 1977. Let's have low-fat sandwiches or whatever. Like what? So like bread, like it was like the opposite of what you want. But also there is this fundamental point that I think when I was a younger man, I wouldn't have had the guts to just say it, which is you should pay for your own kid's lunch. Like that is a matter of personal dignity. Like, I mean, I don't care what I would have to do in terms of a degrading job if it meant paying for my kids' lunches and not having some stranger pay for my own kids' lunches. I don't care how many pizzas you need me to deliver. I'll deliver them before I'll have some stranger buy my own kids' lunch.
I know. It's again, complete inversion of every principle.
Yeah.
That it's the responsibility of the state or the taxpayer to pay people's lunches for children's lunches, not their parents. And so, but the one thing, the actual duties of a parent to protect them and to guide them, to train them up morally and in the way of life that has been handed down to them. No, we're going to take that away. We're going to indoctrinate the children. We're going to push, porn in schools. We're going to push all of this sexual insanity on children in the public schools. Take that away from parents. We're going to push transgenderism on them. And meanwhile, right, this duty that you have to actually feed your children, take care of them, provide for them, right? Well, you don't have that anymore. We're going to take that on as well. It's completely backwards, and it's so horrible. And again, like this isn't just Minnesota. It's like it's what they want for the entire country to be this way. Like this is the model for the entire USA that the Harris and Walz administration will bring on. They haven't put out any policy statement. I mean, as if those things really matter that much, but they haven't put out any platform about what actually do we believe in? What are we going to push here? What are you actually voting for? Right. So the only thing we have to go on is their record and what they have done as a vice president, a senator, and as governor of Minnesota and as a congressman. And the record is horrible. Record's awful, right? If Tim Walz is the vice president, that's an indication of what a Harris administration will look like. Well, you should not want all of America to be turned into Minneapolis, right? That's the last thing anybody wants.
Andrew, what's your website?
Well, let's see. I have, for my book, it's bonifaceoption.com. And then for the podcast that I do with CJ Engel, it is contramundumpodcast.com.
All right. I'll put those links beneath the video, also at tomwoods.com/2532. Well, I very much appreciate this briefing. It's every bit as bad as I feared. But I'm glad that although it's tragic that you should have to leave a place you aspired to live in, I feel confident that greener pastures await you. So all the best, and thank you very much.
Yes, thank you, Tom.
And thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
Make yourself and those you love less vulnerable to the regime, both mentally and physically. Get more forbidden information at tomsfreebooks.com and be sure to subscribe to the show wherever you listen. See you next time.
Like the sound of The Tom Woods Show? My audio production is provided by Podsworth Media. Check them out at podsworth.com.